Once you've identified your story and decided which scenes need to be in your memoir, you probably sat down to write some of those scenes. And maybe the first scene went really well. But then you got into the second scene and you hit a wall. You realize that while you know what happened during this scene, you don't have all the details that you need. For instance, the scene that you're writing involves an argument with your father where he accuses you of dishonesty. Of course, that's hypocritical of him, and you want to lay out for the reader how dishonest your father is and how outrageous it is for him to accuse anyone of that flaw. The problem is that you weren't actually there the night he was arrested for running an illegal gambling operation. You weren't there when he bamboozled his brother into giving him a great deal of money for rehab. And while you were there, you don't clearly remember the time he left you with a family friend for weeks on end, simply because you were too young. In these instances, you'll need to conduct an interview. Without these first-person accounts from a perspective other than yours, your memoir may end up feeling shallow. Worse still, you might get something wrong, opening you up to legal action. Speaking of legal action, be sure to watch the Don't Get Sued video that I included in the extra resources section of this lesson. Depending on the theme of your memoir, you may be interviewing family members, or maybe friends, or sometimes even people you don't know. Regardless of the depth of your relationship with the person that you need to interview, my first bit of advice is not to spring it on them. Don't call up Aunt Linda pretending to be interested in her recipe for pecan pie. Be upfront and schedule a specific time and place for an actual interview, and tell them what you want to interview them about. Even if you know the person, it's important to treat the interview process professionally. This brings me to my first point. Never go in unprepared. Prep for your interview by learning as much as you can before you sit down with the person. Be respectful of their time by compiling what you can without their input. If it's a person unknown to you, have some general background about the person you're interviewing, especially their job if you're seeking them out as some kind of a subject matter expert. This will help your subject feel respected, and this will encourage a deeper level of dialogue with him or her. Further preparation includes having the list of things you're hoping to learn from this person during this interview. Are you looking for their sensory perceptions of an event that you witnessed? Or is it a simple recounting of something you didn't see firsthand? Or maybe you want to know about a particular skill or a business practice. Be clear about what you want from this person and construct your questions accordingly. Next, it's best to record your interviews. This will make it easier for you to review the information later, and you won't be distracted by writing notes while you're trying to listen to the person speak to you. It can also be discomforting to some interview subjects to watch you furiously scribbling things after they say something. Always confirm with your subject that you have their permission to record them. You can use a voice recording app on your phone, or you can get a special digital recorder. I suppose you can do a tape recorder too if you want to be old school. Third, courtesy is non-negotiable. Just because you come in with a clear list of what you need from this person, don't assume that they're just going to give it to you. They may be busy, or maybe they have secrets that they're not willing to divulge to you. Respect their boundaries. If they say no to recording the interview, then don't do it. If they can give you only 15 minutes when you asked for an hour, then take it, and be sure to make the most of those 15 minutes. Additionally, after the interview, ask for permission to contact them again. This will further facilitate trust and help them to be more open. Just because somebody speaks to you once doesn't mean they want to speak to you forever. Also, have a care for your interviewee's emotional state. Observe their body language for changes, or if they suddenly go quiet when you bring up a certain subject. If they do, ask them if they're okay, if they want to take a break. Obviously, if they are openly in distress, don't ask. Just pause and see if you can circle back to a more neutral subject matter for a while. Fourth, use open-ended questions. Closed-ended questions, or yes or no questions, are not terribly helpful in an interview context, or really even most contexts. This is especially true when you're compiling details of a scene that you want to write on. Open-ended questions don't have a set response option, and therefore, subjects are encouraged to speak more in depth and in detail. If you can, working your interview topics organically into an informal conversation style can really help subjects feel at ease with you and with the interview in general. If the subject isn't working on a time crunch, it's good to let the conversation wander for a bit. Don't be ruthless about your questions. Allow yourself to absorb as much detail as possible, and you never know what kind of stories might come out of this interview. But even if you are on a tight schedule, open-ended questions allow for maximum detail in the minimum amount of time. For instance, don't ask your subject if they worked at the Tasty Freeze with your father. Ask them what your dad was like as a teen when they worked together. And finally, respect confidentiality. In many interviews, it's important to address terms of confidentiality, both before and after the interview. Make your intentions clear regarding the scene that you're asking them about, as well as the book as a whole. Explain a little bit about your memoir and your goals. Most importantly, if they tell you something that they want you to keep secret and keep it out of the book, you need to respect that. Even if you're not personally fond of them, and I'm sorry to say sometimes that happens, if you agree to keep something private, then you need to. Sensitivity is a required component when contacting family or friends that you're not currently close with, especially if you're dealing with situations like abuse, addiction, or otherwise dirty laundry. So before contacting an aunt or an old family friend, check in with people that you are close with if you can. Ask if they can foresee any reason why this person might not want to hear from you or might not want to talk about the thing that you want to talk about. 12-step addiction recovery programs advise recovering addicts to make amends to those they've wronged, except when to do so would harm them or others. If you're dealing with sensitive topics, take care not to unintentionally cause harm. I've attached a more in-depth guide for specific journalistic practices for those of you who may cross paths with public figures or any high-level professional person. But for most of you, the interviewing you conduct will likely be with family or with friends or others in your immediate and extended circle. So be mindful to preserve those relationships by acting professionally and kindly. This is your family after all.